So I'm going to do a Bible reading. It's the book of Matthew, chapter 10. The book of Matthew, chapter 10. Then he summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority to expel unclean spirits and to cure sickness and disease of every kind. The names of the 12 apostles are these. First, Simon, now known as Peter, and his brother Andrew, James, Zebedee's son, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus, James and Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot party member, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Jesus sent these men on a mission as the 12 after giving them the following instructions. Do not visit pagan territory and do not enter a Samaritan town. Go instead after the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, make this announcement. The reign of God is at hand. Cure the sick, raise the dead, heal the leprous, expel demons. The gift you have received, give as a gift. Provide yourselves with neither gold, nor silver, nor copper in your belts. No traveling bag, no change of shirt, no sandals, no walking staff. The workman, after all, is worth his keep. Look for a worthy person in every town or village you come to and stay with him until you leave. As you enter his home, bless it. If the home is deserving, your blessing will descend on it. If it is not, your blessing will return to you. If anyone does not receive you or listen to what you have to say, leave that house or town. And once outside, it will shake its dust. And once outside it, shake its dust from your feet. I assure you, it will be easier for the region of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than it will for that town. What I am doing is sending you out like sheep amongst the wolves. You must be clever as snakes and innocent as doves. Be on your guard with respect to others. They will hail you into court. They will flog you in their synagogues. You will be brought to trial before rulers and kings to give witness before them and before the Gentiles on my account. When they hand you over, do not worry about what will you say or how you will say it. When the hour comes, you will be given what you are to say. You yourselves will not be the speakers. The Spirit of your Father will be speaking in you. Brother will hand over brother to death, and the father his child. Children will turn against parents and have them put to death. You will be hated by all on account of me, but whoever holds out to the end will escape death. When they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. I solemnly assure you, you will not have covered the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. No pupil outranks his teacher, no slave his master. The pupil should be glad to become like his teacher, the slave like his master. If they call the head of the house Beelzebul, how much more the members of this household? How much more the members of this household? How much more the members of his household? Do not let them intimidate you. Nothing is concealed that will not be revealed, and nothing hidden that will not become known. What I tell you in darkness, speak in the light. What you hear in private, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who deprive the body of life, but cannot destroy the soul. Rather, fear him who can destroy both body and soul in Gehenna. Are not 2 sparrows sold for next to nothing? Yet not a single sparrow falls to the ground without your Father's consent. As for you, every hair on your head has been counted. So do not be afraid of anything. You are worth more than an entire flock of sparrows. Whoever acknowledges me before men, I will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. Whoever disowns me before men, I will disown before my Father in heaven. Do not suppose that my mission on earth is to spread peace. My mission is to spread not peace, but division, or a sword, or conflict, or war. I have come to set a man at odds with his father, a daughter with her mother, a daughter-in-law with her mother-in-law. In short, to make a man's enemies those of his own household. Whoever loves father or mother, son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. He who will not take up his cross and come after me is not worthy of me. He who seeks only himself brings himself to ruin, whereas he who brings himself to naught for me discovers who he is. He who welcomes you welcomes me, and he who welcomes me welcomes him who sent me. He who welcomes a prophet because he bears the name of prophet receives a prophet's reward. He who welcomes a holy man because he is known to be holy receive a holy man's reward. And I promise you that whoever gives a cup of cold water to one of these lowly ones because he is a disciple will not want for his reward. And that's Matthew chapter 10. Thanks be to God, the word of the Lord. I'm just going to go ahead and actually talk about some of the history of that because that went by pretty quick. So just the history that's going on around this time of Jesus. We're told that Jesus is born 0 AD, but King Herod died at 4 BC. So what is that about? And then he dies at what, 33 AD? He was about 33 years of age. Is that what we're told? Let's just see what Wikipedia says. So Jesus the Christ, Wikipedia. Jesus the Christ, it doesn't say his dates. They should at least guesstimate either 6 or 4 BC or 30 or 33 AD. So that means he would have been, roughly 33 or 34 years of age. 33 or 38, which that doesn't make sense. 6 BC, I guess maybe 6 BC to 33 AD. Anyways, so he was between 33 years of age to 38. Now, that's just Wikipedia, what they're saying. I want to talk about Pontius Pilate and King Herod. First, I want to talk about the emperors. So, during the slaughter of the innocents, the person that actually gave the census was Caesar Augustus. And then you're going to have Caesar Tiberius. Tiberius is going to be the Caesar, the emperor of Rome. So, Tiberius is the one that rules over Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate rules over Herod and all the rest of these other ones. So, Tiberius was the emperor. Tiberius. It's weird we don't even talk about that. So Augustus, this is right after Caesar. Caesar gets killed in 44 BC. You got that big civil war with Mark Antony and Augustus and all the rest of them. Caesar chose Augustus to be his successor. And this was to save the republic, but as soon as Augustus becomes the emperor, he changes the republic into an empire. And then his dates are 27 BC to 14 AD. He's going to rule for 41 years. So you got Caesar Augustus, who was right before Tiberius. Tiberius is going to rule for 23 years from 14 AD to 37 AD. 37 AD, just like we had said here, that he was killed at 33 AD. So that means Tiberius was definitely the emperor when Jesus was killed. When Jesus was born, Augustus was definitely the emperor when Jesus was born. And Tiberius definitely was the emperor when Jesus was killed. And then right after Tiberius is going to be Caligula. So it's interesting that Jesus is going to get killed, and then just a year or 2 or 5, Tiberius is technically killed. They actually killed Tiberius. So Tiberius is going to be 54 years of age when he finally takes power, 14 AD. And then he's going to die at 37 AD or CE. Tiberius is 77. He threw a javelin, and that was it. Tiberius throws a javelin. And they said he was set up because he's an old man. And of course, the old man's going to prove to us that he could throw a javelin. So he throws a javelin. He wrenches his shoulder so bad that he goes to bed. And he takes to bed. He's stuck on he's bedridden. He becomes ill. And so he's sick. When he's talking about Caligula, he had said that he was nursing a viper on Rome's bosom, which is interesting because that's what John the Baptist and Jesus had said of these people, that they were a brood of vipers. And so Rome was all about being strong and stuff. So he was actually bragging about that they were vipers, and he was raising a viper. Caligula, he's going to rule for 44 years, 37 AD to 41 AD. So for 4 years. And then Caligula is known as one of the worst emperors in Rome's history. So interesting, you killed the God of Jesus, and then you died. And then Caligula is going to get in there, and that kind of really fucks Rome's shit all up. So Tiberius is the second Roman emperor. So that's just amazing when people are talking about Pontius Pilate and King Herod and whoever the other Roman officials are, they don't mention Tiberius. In Tiberius's last years, he was a tyrannical recluse. He lived on the island of Capri, like Capri Sun or Capri Pants. So he's living on the island of Capri. And then he inflicts a reign of terror. So people want to talk about the French Revolution, and they want to talk about Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And see what happened with the French and the reign of terror? When it comes to fascist authoritarians, that's all they do is rule with a reign of terror. Tiberius takes power, 54 years of age. He was on Mark Antony's side during the Civil War after Caesar's death. So that's remarkable. If you want to become emperor, then you actually fight a civil war against the guy who's eventually going to give you the throne. And so that's just amazing how this politics of Roman Empire had worked. And then it seemed like to me that the way that Augustus had chose Tiberius was they were thinking it was going to be one guy and another guy during his entire life. And then right at the end, when Augustus dies, he was like, Tiberius. And then Tiberius was the successor. So it was like right before he died, he just pointed to somebody, and Tiberius happened to position himself as the favorite of Augustus at the time. August 19, 14 AD is when Augustus dies. Apparently he ate poisoned figs, which is remarkable. It makes me think of that one president, Zachary Taylor, who they said ate poisoned peaches or something, poisoned apples. So was he poisoned intentionally? Were the figs just food poisoning? It was just, bad food to begin with. He ate some rotten meat. I'm not for sure. 9 AD is when Arminius defeats Varius. This is just Germanica, the German tribes. But Arminius defeats Varius in 9 AD. So Jesus would have been, 9, 10, 15 years old. And then Germanicus is going to eventually defeat Arminius 7 years later in 16 AD. Jesus would have been alive. He had been young during these events. He might have actually known about these events. It's just remarkable, all the things that happened from, 6 BC to 33 BC. A lot of important shit. There was some historical account that had said that Jesus, some historian, Eusebius, actually I got that written down. I'll talk about that at the very end. Let's just read something here about one of the Pontius Pilate. So Pontius Pilate is the one that's going to, condemn Jesus to die. They don't know exactly how he died, but tradition said that he killed himself. So Judas betrayed him. He kills himself. Fucking Tiberius dies right afterwards. And now Pontius Pilate there's a famous little artwork or pictograph or something where he's going to kill himself. And so the Samaritans, claiming not to have been armed, complained to Lucius Vitellius, the elder, the governor of Syria, term 35 to 39, who had Pilate recalled to Rome to be judged by Tiberius. So Pontius Pilate was going to go to Rome because he got snitched on, right, by Lucius Vitellius, the elder, and then Tiberius was going to judge him. But before Tiberius could judge Pontius Pilate, Tiberius dies. So Tiberius dies before Pontius Pilate, and then that ends Pilate's governorship. Pilate just falls off the map. So it's almost like he welcomed the thing and was like, well, shit, I don't really want to do this goddamn fucking governor shit anymore. And then Caligula rises to power, and then we don't see Pontius Pilate anymore. This dates the end of Pilate's governorship, 36-37 AD. Tiberius died in Misenum on March 16th in 37 in his 78th year. Tacitus, Annals. So he was 78 years old. I read that he was 77. 77, 78. So the very first year that Tiberius takes power in 14 AD, so Jesus would have been around 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. He expelled the Jews out of Rome. Like, my God, right in the very beginning, Tiberius declared war against the Jews. And so he expels the Jews from Rome. And why? Because there was 4 Jewish folks who, apparently this is alleged, but 4 Jewish folks who had conspired to steal a woman's treasure. And that's it. 4 Jewish folks conspired to steal a woman's treasure. That's it. All you Jewish folks need to get the hell out of here. So anybody back in the time of Tiberius, the second Roman emperor, could be a volunteer prosecutor. And if you had the goods, you had the evidence, and you got the conviction, then you could share in the accused estate. You could share in the accused. Isn't that amazing? You could just volunteer yourself as a prosecutor and then lead the conviction yourself. 37 CE, Tiberius, 77, I already talked about his death. Caligula is going to be the one that takes over after him. After he threw the javelin, he lapsed into a coma, right? He's bedridden, he becomes sick, and then he goes into a coma. So they thought that Tiberius was going to die. The Praetorian Guard declared their support for Caligula as the new emperor, as Tiberius was essentially in a coma, bedridden, sick, and looked like he was about to die. But miraculously, Tiberius is going to recover, which is, yay, the emperor is alive. But wait a second, we've already declared our support for Caligula. Well, we can't go back on our word anymore. So the next day, a guy named Macro, I don't know if it's a general or just a citizen, but a guy named Macro goes to the bed of Tiberius and he smothers him with a heap of blankets, which that's fucked up, isn't it? He's the emperor. He's the emperor of Rome. He gets to be emperor until he dies, but they thought he already was dead. They gave it to Caligula, and they was like, well, shit, we already gave it to Caligula, but he didn't die yet, so Caligula shouldn't have been the damn emperor. And then his legacy, Tiberius's legacy, was that he left Rome prosperous and stable. So he actually ruled Rome with a nice stable hand, and Rome was prosperous during his tenure. Herod Agrippa, Pontius Pilate, Nero burned Christians in 64 AD in the Great Fire. Atticus, let's see, Pontius Pilate, his year is 26 AD to 37 AD. Tiberius lived on the island of Capri. Render unto Caesar what is his. So you only got a couple references to Tiberius. That's one of the parables. Render unto Caesar. He was talking about Tiberius when he was talking about render unto Caesar what is his. Tertullian, one report, Tiberius wanted Jesus to be called a god because of the resurrection. Eusebius, this is a church history guy, a church historian, Eusebius, he had said that Tiberius wanted to name Jesus because we don't know any connection whatsoever between Tiberius and Jesus at all. Only that, Pontius Pilate was recalled to Rome, but that was several years later. So it would seem like there probably was a report. I mean, are they just executing zealots and a bunch of religious fanatics over and over again without letting Caesar of Rome know? There would be something excessive force. But Eusebius had actually said this about the connection between Tiberius and Jesus. So this is just one historian, one little report. But it could be true. You never know. Because if there was no connection, and this is the only connection anyways, Tiberius had referred to the Senate that Jesus should be called a god. So he was going to make Jesus a god like afterwards, kind of make him a saint. And he told the Senate that he wanted Jesus to be a god, and the Senate rejected it. And so therefore, let's see, contrived of no measures against Christ. So, yeah, there was no other thing besides that except that he tried to nominate Jesus to be recognized as a god post-mortem, after his death. Pontius Pilate probably sent a report to Rome. Tiberius would have known something, you think, but also Tiberius didn't really know what his minions in Judea and Jerusalem were doing. I'm not for sure. That sounds like bullshit to me. But he was a recluse. He was a tyrannical recluse living on the island of Capri. And he had inflicted a reign of terror. So there's no telling how many people, how many enemies he had created for himself. So the Samaritans, the Good Samaritan was the one that says, what about that person? If you don't help the person on the side of the road, what will happen to him? Martin Luther King talked about the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan is another parable that Jesus talks about. If I help this poor guy, this poor wretch, he might hurt me and I might be out of $1 and I might be out of water and food. But if you don't help him, what will happen to him? This is just incredible. This is the Good Samaritan. I need to write that down. Because when I think about like all the great things about Jesus, Christianity and Catholics really do a disservice to him. The Good Samaritan. Like when it comes to the Palestinian people, right? So if we were to be like Jesus and think of the Good Samaritan, if we don't speak out about the Palestinian people, which Jesus was born in Bethlehem, if we don't speak out about the genocide that we Americans are financing, we're giving our United Nations veto, so we're giving Israel our umbrella, we're giving them the bombs and the tanks and the planes, and we're giving them $23.5 billion. But the Good Samaritan says if we don't speak out for Palestine, people might say, hey, you're the bad guy. Hey, you shouldn't speak out for the oppressed and the murdered and the abused and the tortured. They're living in camps right now. This is a colonialist project. This is a white supremacist colony. This is ridiculous. Either A, you have a two-state solution, or B, you integrate. I mean, we had segregation here for about 100 years. The two original sins of America is the genocide and the slavery. And so there was a genocide of the Native Americans, and then slavery happens for 400, 300 years, and then segregation happened for another 100 years on top of that. So that's what all this looks like to me. It's just against freedom of religion. There are a bunch of, Muslims, right? So, and the theocracy of Judaism, Israel, they picked their religion as Judaism, and they just can't stand Muslims. But Americans believe that you have freedom of religion. Americans and a lot of the American states believe we have freedom of religion. So Tiberius, let's see, would have known something, the Good Samaritan. So I'm talking about the Good Samaritan. If we help Palestine, what will happen to us? If we don't help Palestine, what will happen to them? What will happen to them if we're to use the Good Samaritan as a rubric, as a ruler for how we should treat others? So Pontius Pilate, let's see, let's get a couple of his facts up here. He's the 5th governor of the Roman province of Judea, serving under Emperor Tiberius. He was best known for being the official who presided over the trial of Jesus and ultimately ordered his crucifixion. Pilate's importance in Christianity is underscored by his prominent place in both the Apostles' and Nicene creeds, because the Gospels portray Pilate as reluctant to execute Jesus. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church believes that Pilate became a Christian and venerates him as both a saint and a martyr, a belief which is historically shared by the Coptic Church, which, okay, but then there's also that report where, he might have suicided himself. He might have pulled and that's interesting about the Nicene Creed and the Apostles' Creed. I'll take a look at that later. Biblical references with Herod Archelaus. So when it comes to King Herod died 4 BC. So who are we talking about when we talk about King Herod? Well, there was actually a bunch of King Herods. The King Herod that we're talking about with the massacre of the innocents is Herod the Great, or Herod the First. He's a Roman Jewish client king of the Herodian kingdom of Judea. So he's going to die 4 BCE, but then he had a whole bunch of his sons, Herod Antipatus, Herod Archelaus. There's several Herods. So Herod the First isn't going to be the one that's around, but they keep talking about Herod even during the time of the crucifixion. So essentially there's a Herod that's kind of all over the place. The name Herod is mentioned, King Herod is mentioned in death in Acts 12, 20 to 23. So he is the king named Herod whose death is recounted in Acts 12. This is Herod Agrippa. So Herod Agrippa, he was the king of Judea from 41 AD to 44. So that isn't the Herod that we're talking about. We're not talking about Herod the Great. Which Herod was the one that was ruling over, Judea when Jesus was killed? Herod Antipatus was the 1st century ruler of Galilee and Perea. He bore the title of Tetrarch, ruler of a quarter, and is both referred to as both Herod the Tetrarch and King Herod in the New Testament. He was a son of Herod the Great and a grandson of Antipater the Idumean. He is widely known today for accounts in the New Testament of his role in the events that led to the executions of John the Baptist and Jesus of Nazareth. Matthew 14, 1 through 12. His father, Herod the Great, was described in the account as ordering the massacre of the innocents, marking the earliest biblical account of the concerns of the government in Jerusalem regarding Jesus' existence. Following the death of his father, 4 BC, Herod Antipas was recognized as Tetrarch by Caesar Augustus, and subsequently by his own brother, the ethnarch Herod Archelaus. Antipas officially ruled Galilee and Perea as a client state of the Roman Empire. He was responsible for building projects at Sepphoris and Betharramtha, and for the construction of his capital, Tiberius, on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee, named in honor of his patron, the Emperor Tiberius. The city later became a center of rabbinic learning after the Jewish-Roman Wars, 66 to 135. So there you go, Herod Antipas. That's who was the Herod that was in charge when Jesus was crucified. Let's talk about Herod Archelaus. So Archelaus is mentioned in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2, verse 13 to 23. An angel of the Lord appears to Joseph in a dream, told him to get up and take Mary and Jesus and flee to Egypt to avoid the massacre of the innocents. Remember, King Herod had ordered the massacre of the innocents, very similar to what's happened in Palestine right now, very similar to what Pharaoh did when Moses was born. It's incredible that we find these messiahs, these savior of humanity, during a massacre of the innocents. I thought that made Jesus bullshit, But apparently massacre of the innocents happened all the time. How many people was killed in Mariupol, right? Russia invades Ukraine, killed tens of thousands of people in Mariupol. Look at the Iraq War. 500,000 to 1 million people were killed in the Iraq War. And then look at Palestine today. 200,000 Palestinians have been killed today. And this is, Jesus was born in Bethlehem. So if you're a Christian and you don't speak out about the genocide that's happening in Palestine right now, are you even really a fucking Christian? They're killing baby Jesuses right now as we speak. Right now they're in the West Bank, so they want to say Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. The Palestinian Authority runs the West Bank. They're all talking about Gaza, but now they're in the West Bank destroying the streets and killing people in the West Bank. Why have they destroyed 70% of the streets in the West Bank? It's not being run by Hamas, it's being run by the Palestinian Authority. So this makes no sense unless you look at it as a colony. It's a colony that doesn't give a shit about a two-state solution, doesn't give a shit about integration. Those are the two legitimate options. Two-state solution or integration. Those are the only two fucking legitimate options that are out there, but they've already taken half of Palestine, so they're just going to wipe them all out and take the other half of Palestine. It's fucking ridiculous. It's fucking disgusting. You know, just 8 years ago, we thought Bernie Sanders was going to become president and we were going to get health care for everybody. And now we're saying, hey guys, stop fucking doing genocide, the grandfather of crimes. What is worse than motherfucking genocide? Nothing. The whole world sees exactly what we're doing, and Israel might get us fucking nuked. So not only should you just do it for them because of the Good Samaritan and what will happen to them if you don't speak up for them, what's going to happen to you? What's going to happen to you if this shit keeps on going? I've heard a bunch of crazy talk, but some people are saying this is going to be the last election and some other shit. So, however, upon hearing that Archelaus had succeeded his father as ruler of Judea, oh wait, hold on. So, he goes to Egypt, right? Joseph and Mary and Jesus goes to Egypt because of the angel in the dream. Then Herod the Great dies. And when Herod the Great dies, Joseph was told by an angel in a dream to return to the land of Israel. And this is presumably to Bethlehem. However, upon hearing that Archelaus had succeeded his father as ruler of Judea, he was afraid to go there, Matthew 2:22, and was again warned in a dream by God, and he turned aside to the region of Galilee. So it was like, all right, King Herod is dead, come on back. Wait a second, there's another King Herod that's around, so you're going to have to still be sneaking about. This is Matthew's explanation of why Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, but grew up in Nazareth. The beginning and conclusion of Jesus' parable of the menace in the Gospel of Luke chapter 19 may refer to Archelaus' journey to Rome. Some interpreters conclude from this that Jesus' parables and preaching made use of events familiar to the people as examples for bringing his spiritual lessons to life. Others read the allusion as arising from later adaptation of Jesus' parables in the oral tradition before the parables were recorded in the Gospels. This is what Luke 19, 12, 14, 27 says. So, a noble man went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom, and then returned. But his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, we do not want this man to reign over us. But as for these enemies of mine, said the nobleman, who did not want me to reign over them, bring them here and slaughter them before me. So that's just like, you know, the Tiberius, the Augustus, all the Romans were pretty much fucking disgusting people. Jesus says if they try to get you into service, if they try to draft you into service, because they would just make Jewish folks carry all their equipment, the Romans would, and they would make the Jewish folks carry all the equipment for a mile. Jesus says that if they ever draft you into doing that 1 mile walk in service for them, walk 2 miles, right? Just like he says, if a man wants your shirt, give him your coat, turn the other cheek, love your enemies. And so all these things, when you think about all the things that Jesus says, how in the fuck does the Palestinian genocide happen without the Christian church? The Christians are being bombed. The Christian church, I just saw a video of a bomb that just landed right next to the Christian church. So the Christians are sitting there praying in, you know, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and then bombs are bombing all around them. If you're a Christian, you're supposed to give a damn, you're supposed to love, you're supposed to give a shit, and if you don't even give a fuck about your own Jesus Christ, if you don't even give a fuck about the people of Bethlehem, what color do you think Jesus was? If he wasn't black, he was brown. So to be a racist, you know, white supremacist, this is one of the last colonialist projects. The rest of the world has overthrown their colonial masters, and so this is one of the last ones that's still remaining. Harry Truman was a Christian Zionist. And let's see, is that it with the history? So Tiberius was in power, and then Herod, was it Archelaus, Antipas. So Herod Antipas was the ruler of Galilee and Perea. So he was the tetrarch, the ruler of a quarter. And so he's King Herod. He's the people that were responsible for killing Jesus would be Tiberius, Herod Antipas, and Pontius Pilate. Those would be the three Roman officials. It was the fucking Romans that killed Jesus. So Jesus was a revolutionary during a very tumultuous time period, speaking out against the empire, speaking out against imperialism. And he was saying a bunch of revolutionary shit, instead of being like a strong Roman, just, put a boot on people's head and stomp them. He's sitting there saying, turn the other cheek and love your enemy and all this very passive stuff. So if you're a Christian or Catholic, there's just so many cool shit about, Jesus. It's ridiculous that you don't. Have you read your fucking Bible? Have the Christians read their fucking Bible whatsoever? So Herod Archelaus was not the one that was in power. It was Herod Antipas, Tiberius, and Pontius Pilate. And we hear Pontius Pilate might have killed himself. Tiberius is going to die in just a couple years. He was murdered, right? Basically, he survived that javelin throw, but he was smothered by Macro, a guy named Macro. He was smothered in his sleep, with blankets, which that's the emperor, right? That's the strong emperor that was in charge. How did he die? How did he go? He wasn't stabbed like Caesar. He didn't do any heroic thing. He's in the island of Capri, all to himself, around his noblemen and one of his, people, or one of Caligula's people. One of the people, he's the one that nursed the viper in Rome's bosom. So he nursed the viper, and then the viper fucking got him. His chickens came home to roost. So yeah, that's some of the history. Augustus, Tiberius, and then Caligula. It was the second Roman emperor that was responsible for Jesus' crucifixion. So there you go, Matthew chapter 10.